Chapter 1: The Pull of Vitaelium. In the dark depths of the universe, the planet Draenor slowly bathed in the first rays of dawn. The ancient forests whispered with secrets, and hidden within them were temples that had stood for centuries. These temples were guardians of a mystery, Vitaelium, the rare mineral that powered the very fabric of space and time. Its energy could bend reality, alter the flow of time, and control the very essence of existence itself. Ilanar Morn, the young leader of the Orla Awakening, had been tasked with uncovering the secrets of these temples. The mission, however, was far from simple. Vitaelium was no ordinary substance. It was the key to the balance of the entire universe. While its powers could fuel wars, they could also sustain entire civilizations. Whoever controlled it would control the very fate of the cosmos. As Ilanar approached the entrance of the temple, she could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. The stone doors, etched with ancient symbols, groaned as they slowly opened. Stepping inside, she immediately sensed that she was walking in a place where the laws of time and space did not apply in the same way. The air was thick, heavy with the echoes of long-forgotten souls. The temple was a place of both reverence and sorrow. It had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Here, life and death intertwined, leaving behind only memories and remnants of those who had come before. But Ilanar wasn't just seeking knowledge. She was seeking something far more dangerous, the key to the universe's ultimate power. As she descended deeper into the temple, Ilanar's thoughts began to shift. She wasn't merely an explorer, a scholar, or a warrior. She was the chosen one, marked by fate to wield Vitaelium's power. But with this power came a heavy responsibility. The very forces that she sought to understand could be her undoing. And yet she could not turn back. The pull of Vitaelium was too strong. At the heart of the temple, Ilanar found it. A massive crystal structure, pulsing with a deep, unnatural light. It was both terrifying and beautiful, its core thrumming with an energy that seemed to transcend the physical world. This was Vitaelium, the lifeblood of the universe, the force that held everything together. But as Ilanar reached out to touch the crystal, something inside her stirred. A voice, not of flesh, but of pure energy, whispered through her mind. "You have come to claim what was never meant for you." The voice was ancient, filled with the weight of countless ages. Ilanar hesitated. She had come prepared, armed with knowledge, with resolve, but she had not prepared for this. The crystal was not merely a power source. It was a living entity, a sentient force with its own will, its own purpose. And now Ilanar had awakened it. As she touched the surface of the crystal, a surge of energy coursed through her. Her mind raced, visions of the future flooding her consciousness. She saw not just the immediate consequences of her actions, but the far-reaching ripples that would reshape the very fabric of the universe. She saw the warlords, the empires, and the factions that would rise to claim this power. She saw the destruction that would follow, and the lives that would be lost. But she also saw hope, a chance to balance the chaos, to guide the universe back from the brink of annihilation. The power of Vitaelium could be the salvation of her people, or it could be their doom. As the visions subsided, Ilanar fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the sheer force of what she had just experienced. But the decision was made. She could not unsee what she had seen. She could not ignore the weight of the responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. Suddenly, the ground shook. The walls of the temple rumbled, and Ilanar looked up in horror. The doorways she had passed through were no longer empty. A figure emerged from the shadows, Sevra Kaal, the ruthless general of the Vitaelium Empire, followed by a contingent of her elite soldiers. "We know what you've done," Sevra's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and commanding. "And we will take what is ours." Before Ilanar could react, another figure entered, Talon Zhir, the enigmatic princess of the Zhyran monarchs. Her eyes were cold, calculating, as she surveyed the scene with a sense of entitlement. "You should have known this wouldn't be so simple," Talon said, her voice laced with both disdain and intrigue. "Vitaelium doesn't belong to anyone, but we're willing to make a deal, if you're willing to play our game." The tension in the air thickened. Ilanar was not alone in her pursuit of power. Every faction, every empire had their eyes set on Draenor, and Vitaelium was the ultimate prize. But Ilanar knew something they did not. The power of Vitaelium was not something that could be controlled by mere force or politics. It was far more dangerous and far more unpredictable than they realized. As Sevra's soldiers advanced, and Talon made her demands, Ilanar found herself at the center of a storm that would engulf the entire universe. With Vitaelium in her possession, she held the power to reshape the fate of all those around her. But the question remained, would she be able to control it, or would it destroy everything she held dear? Chapter 2, Shadows of the Empire. The air in the temple chamber grew thick with tension. Ilanar could feel the weight of Sevra Kaal's icy stare bearing down on her, a stark reminder of the Viraten Empire's insatiable thirst for power. She stood between two forces, one from her own people, the other from an empire that would stop at nothing to dominate the galaxy. Sevra's soldiers, armed with gleaming weapons and armored in the finest technology of the Viraten Empire, moved in unison, as if they were an extension of their commander's will. They were silent, efficient, deadly. Ilanar knew that if she made even the slightest wrong move, they would tear her apart without hesitation. You've awakened something far beyond your understanding, Ilanar Morn. Sevra's voice broke the silence. Her tone as cold as the steel that lined her soldiers' suits. This power does not belong to you, nor to anyone else. It belongs to the Viraten Empire, the rightful rulers of the stars. And now it will serve us. Ilanar didn't flinch. She had come here knowing the risks, knowing that Draenor would draw the attention of powerful forces. But the Viraten Empire? She had not expected them to be the first to arrive. You don't understand, Sevra? Ilanar replied, her voice steady but filled with an underlying urgency. This power, it's not something that can be controlled by brute force. You'll destroy everything if you try to take it by force. Vitaelium will consume you. Sevra's lips curled into a smirk. You think I'm afraid of a rock? She gestured toward the glowing crystal at the center of the room, the heart of the temple. I've seen things that would break your mind, Ilanar. This mineral is nothing. Power is what I know, and power will bend this to my will. Ilanar stood tall, her heart racing as her mind raced with thoughts of her next move. She had learned much about Vitaelium, but she had no answers for how to wield it. She felt the pull of its energy, but it was as though it was testing her, questioning her resolve. The visions she'd seen earlier were like flashes of lightning, brief, blinding moments of truth that had left her disoriented and unsure. Suddenly, a new voice interrupted the standoff. Well, what do we have here? Talon Zhir's voice oozed with condescension as she stepped into the chamber. Her tall, regal form cut through the tension, her dark eyes gleaming with both curiosity and arrogance. She was flanked by a group of Zyran soldiers, but unlike Sevra's cold, methodical troops, the Zyran warriors were dressed in ornate, decorative armor, their presence more about the image of power than its practical application. Sevra turned to face Talon, her expression hardening. This is none of your concern, Princess Zhir. Leave now before we turn our attention to you. Talon laughed, a soft but dismissive sound. I don't think so, General Kaal. This is very much my concern. After all, Draenor and its secrets are worth more than 1,000 armies. If you think you can simply take it, she gestured toward Vitaelium, then you are gravely mistaken. Ilanar's mind raced. Talon Zhir, the princess of the Zyran monarchs, was dangerous. She was shrewd, and her people had long prided themselves on their ability to manipulate the finer details of power. If Talon was here, it meant that the Zyran monarchs were already eyeing the Vitaelium for themselves, perhaps with even more grand ambitions than the Viraten Empire. Talon took a step closer to the crystal, her eyes never leaving Sevra. I see you've already overstayed your welcome, Sevra. Perhaps it's time for you to leave. I'm sure we can strike a much more agreeable arrangement. Sevra's eyes narrowed. I will not leave, Princess. This is not a matter for negotiation. Vitaelium is ours, and you are standing in our way. I don't need to negotiate with you. Talon replied smoothly. But I'd like to remind you of one thing. Vitaelium has the power to disrupt time itself. It's not just a weapon. It's a force that can reshape the very fabric of the universe. You're playing with something you don't understand. Sevra's expression faltered for just a moment. Ilanar saw the brief flicker of doubt in the general's eyes before it was quickly masked by her usual icy demeanor. But it was enough. Talon's words had struck a chord. The Zhyran princess, sensing her advantage, continued. The truth is, General Kaal, the Viraten Empire is too blinded by its thirst for domination to see what's truly at stake here. Vitaelium isn't just a tool for war. It's a test of who is worthy of it. And I assure you, you will never be worthy. Ilanar watched as the two women faced off. Their words sharp, their motives clear. Sevra's desire for control clashed with Talon's more calculating approach. Both were powerful in their own right, but Ilanar knew something they didn't. Vitaelium didn't care for ambition. It cared only for those who understood its power, and more importantly, its cost. Before Ilanar could say anything, the ground suddenly trembled. The temple walls shook, and a low, guttural growl echoed through the chamber. A moment later, the sound of heavy boots clanging against stone filled the air. Enough of this. The voice was harsh, guttural, and undeniably menacing. Ilanar turned toward the source of the sound, and her heart skipped a beat. Drakhan Arak, the infamous warlord of the Kalamar Confederation, stepped into the room. His massive frame was draped in battle-worn armor, the sigils of his people emblazoned across his chest. His eyes were cold, calculating, and full of the brutal, unyielding rage that had earned him his reputation. You've been talking for far too long, Drakhan said, his deep voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Vitaelium doesn't belong to any of you. It belongs to whoever has the strength to take it. Ilanar knew this was a turning point. The game had shifted from a battle of words to a battle for survival. Every faction was here, each vying for the power of Vitaelium, but none of them understood the real threat it posed. This wasn't just about domination or control, it was about the very nature of existence itself. And they were all playing a dangerous game. Chapter 3. The Price of Power. The chamber was now filled with the full might of 3 empires, each one with its own agenda, and each one unaware of the true dangers they faced. Sevra Kaal, Talon Zhir, and Drakhan Arak were all moving toward the crystal, their hands outstretched as if they could claim it by mere willpower. But Ilanar knew the truth. Vitaelium would not be claimed easily. It would test them. It would consume them. And only the one who truly understood its nature would survive the trial. Ilanar felt the pull again, stronger now. She could almost hear the crystal calling to her, its whispers growing louder. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. I won't let you destroy everything, Ilanar muttered to herself, steeling her resolve. She took a deep breath, focused on the crystal, and then everything went dark. Chapter 4. The Awakening of Vitaelium. Darkness enveloped Ilanar as the crystal's energy surged through her, its power overwhelming every fiber of her being. It was as though time itself had frozen. She felt the universe stretching and contracting around her, as though the very fabric of reality was being tested, pulled apart and reassembled in an instant. For a brief moment, she could hear nothing but a deep, resonating hum, as though the crystal was speaking to her, calling her to listen. Ilanar's mind raced. She was no longer just a part of this world. She felt her consciousness expanding, swirling across vast distances, catching glimpses of other worlds, other places far beyond Draenor. She saw empires in their glory, and then in their ruin. She saw the rise and fall of ancient civilizations, the birth of stars, and the death of galaxies. Vitaelium was not simply a source of power, it was the keeper of time itself. Her hands clenched into fists, as the raw energy coursed through her. She could feel the others, Sevra, Talon, Drakhan, all around her, their intentions clearer than ever before. Sevra's lust for power, Talon's cold calculation, and Drakhan's brute force. They all sought the same thing, but they lacked what Ilanar had learned in the span of a heartbeat. They did not understand what they were about to awaken. The vision faded, leaving her breathless, her body trembling as if she had just crossed through a doorway between worlds. She stood alone in the chamber now, surrounded by the others, who had witnessed only the aftermath of the crystal's power. What happened? Drakhan's deep voice broke through the silence. He stood at the edge of the room, his eyes dark and full of suspicion. Sevra, her hand still outstretched toward the crystal, looked at Ilanar with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "What did you do?" she demanded. "This is no time for games, Ilanar. The crystal, it did something to you." Talon, her eyes narrowed, stepped closer to Ilanar, her every movement deliberate. "You saw it too, didn't you? The future, the consequences. You understand now, don't you? Vitaelium doesn't just give power, it shows us what we're capable of. And it's not kind." Ilanar staggered slightly, her knees weak, but she refused to fall. She had seen too much to turn away now. "No, you're wrong," Ilanar said, her voice steady despite the storm that raged inside her. "It doesn't just show us the future. It shows us our choices, every single one. It shows the path of destruction, but it also shows the path to salvation. We don't need to control it, we need to understand it." The room fell silent as the weight of her words hung in the air. Civilizations, the birth of stars, and the death of galaxies. Vitaelium was not simply a source of power, it was the keeper of time itself. Her hands clenched into fists as the raw energy coursed through her. She could feel the others, Sevra, Talon, Drakhan, all around her, their intentions clearer than ever before. Sevra's lust for power, Talon's cold calculation, and Drakhan's brute force. They all sought the same thing, but they lacked what Ilanar had learned in the span of a heartbeat. They did not understand what they were about to awaken. The vision faded, leaving her breathless, her body trembling as if she had just crossed through a doorway between worlds. She stood alone in the chamber now, surrounded by the others, who had witnessed only the aftermath of the crystal's power. What happened? Drakhan's deep voice broke through the silence. He stood at the edge of the room, his eyes dark and full of suspicion. Sevra, her hand still outstretched toward the crystal, looked at Ilanar with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "What did you do?" she demanded. "This is no time for games, Ilanar. The crystal, it did something to you." Talon, her eyes narrowed, stepped closer to Ilanar, her every movement deliberate. "You saw it too, didn't you? The future, the consequences. You understand now, don't you? Vitaelium doesn't just give power, it shows us what we're capable of. And it's not kind." Ilanar staggered slightly, her knees weak, but she refused to fall. She had seen too much to turn away now. "No, you're wrong," Ilanar said, her voice steady despite the storm that raged inside her. "It doesn't just show us the future. It shows us our choices, every single one. It shows the path of destruction, but it also shows the path to salvation. We don't need to control it, we need to understand it." The room fell silent as the weight of her words hung in the air. "Understand it?" Sevra scoffed. "You think that's going to stop me? I've conquered worlds, and I'll conquer this too." "No, Sevra," Ilanar replied, her voice cutting through the tension. "You can't control it. None of us can. But if we don't learn to coexist with it, we'll all be destroyed. Vitaelium is not a tool. It is a force of nature. It is the balance of the universe. You cannot own it." Ilanar took a step back, her gaze fixed on the crystal. The dark energy pulsed with a soft, rhythmic thrum, as if beckoning her once more. She could feel its call, but this time she resisted. There was a deeper understanding growing inside her. She wasn't ready to take control, but she knew that if anyone was to wield the power of Vitaelium, they would need to change, to adapt, to understand that the power wasn't meant for any one person. It was meant for the universe as a whole. Drakhan grunted, his patience wearing thin. "Enough talk," he said, stepping forward. "We're wasting time. This is ours for the taking." He reached out to seize the crystal, but Ilanar's hand shot out, stopping him. "You don't understand," Ilanar shouted, her voice rising with urgency. "If you touch it, it will consume you. The power is too much for you." For a moment the room was still. Drakhan's eyes flickered with doubt, but he quickly masked it with a growl. "I'm not afraid of it." Ilanar's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the crystal's power pulsing through her veins, like a living, breathing entity, waiting for a decision to be made. There was no more time for hesitation. "Then you'll die," she said softly. "All of you will." A heavy silence settled over the room. Talon and Sevra both regarded Ilanar with cold, calculating eyes, but neither made a move. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing would happen. Then, the ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble vibrating through the chamber. The air grew thick with energy, and Ilanar felt it. A presence stirring in the crystal, awakening from the depths of time. It was no longer a passive force. It was active, alive. "You've awakened it," Talon whispered, stepping back. "It's here." Sevra's eyes narrowed. "We've only just begun." Before anyone could react, a loud, thunderous crack echoed through the temple, and a fissure opened in the ground beneath the crystal. A brilliant beam of white light shot up from the heart of the temple, piercing the ceiling above. The force was so intense that the entire chamber shook, and the walls began to crumble. The crystal pulsed once more, sending a shockwave of energy outward. Ilanar stumbled, barely maintaining her balance as the room around her collapsed. The vision she had seen earlier began to flood back. Images of destruction, of war, of entire worlds torn apart by the unchecked power of Vitaelium. It was happening now. The temple was falling, the balance of power shifting, and the universe was beginning to unravel. "We need to leave," Ilanar cried, turning toward the others. "Now!" But it was already too late. Chapter 5: The Dying Light. The ground split open as the energy from the crystal spiraled outward, throwing everyone off their feet. The temple groaned as it collapsed, the once sturdy stone walls now crumbling under the immense pressure of Vitaelium's power. Ilanar's vision blurred, and for a moment, she thought she might lose consciousness. As the chamber continued to collapse, a terrifying realization struck her. Vitaelium was not just a source of energy. It was a catalyst, an amplifier. And now that it had been awakened, it was breaking down the very fabric of the universe. She had seen glimpses of this, the end. A universe stretched to its breaking point, shattered by its own ambition. The chaos was inevitable, but there was still a chance, a slim chance, to stop it. "Get up!" Ilanar shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She scrambled to her feet, her eyes darting toward the others. Sevra, Talon, and Drakhan were all scrambling to escape the falling debris, but they weren't fast enough. The ground cracked open again, sending a burst of energy shooting into the air. Ilanar dove for cover, her hands trembling as she reached for the crystal once more. It was calling to her, but she knew now that she couldn't control it. No one could. "We need to leave," Ilanar screamed again, but there was no time. The walls were collapsing, the very foundation of the temple disintegrating. The crystal was no longer a beacon of hope. It was a harbinger of doom. With a final, deafening crack, the temple gave way completely. The energy exploded outward in a blinding flash, and Ilanar felt herself being pulled into the void. Chapter 6: Into the Void. Ilanar's body was weightless. She had no sense of time, no sense of space. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. The immense energy from the crystal had thrown her into the void, but it wasn't just a physical void. It was a rift between realities. The world she had known, the people she had fought beside and against, all felt distant now, as if they were no longer part of her existence. She tried to move, but it was like swimming through thick molasses. She couldn't grasp onto anything, couldn't find an anchor. The universe itself seemed to be bending, warping around her, like the very laws of physics had been torn apart. Then, as if some unseen hand had reached into the darkness, Ilanar was pulled back. A sharp jolt ran through her, and she gasped for air as the weightlessness disappeared. She blinked rapidly, trying to regain her bearings. The temple was gone. The vast chamber, the crystal, the walls, everything was reduced to nothingness. And yet, she found herself standing on solid ground. She looked around, but there was no sign of her enemies, no indication of where she was. The only thing she could see was an endless horizon, a place where the very concept of time seemed irrelevant. A voice broke through the silence. "You've crossed into the in-between." Ilanar spun around. There, standing before her, was a figure draped in a cloak of shifting, ethereal light. The figure was humanoid but not quite human, its features obscured by the glowing mist that surrounded it. The air around the figure seemed to hum with energy, a presence both alien and familiar. Are you part of Vitaelium?" Ilanar asked, her voice trembling. "Did I die?" The figure shook its head slowly, the movement fluid and unnerving. "No, you are not dead. You are between realities, between moments. This is the space where the boundaries of time and existence blur." Ilanar's heart raced. "Then where am I?" The figure stepped forward, its form flickering like a distant star. "You are in the place between choices, between the path of destruction and the path of salvation. This is the moment where the universe decides its fate. But even now, the choices you make will ripple across eternity." Ilanar's mind struggled to comprehend the enormity of what the figure was saying. "I don't understand. I thought I was fighting for something. For my people. For the future." "The future is not so easily defined," the figure said, its voice echoing in Ilanar's mind. "The paths you've seen, the ones you think are the only ones that matter, there are countless others. Vitaelium is not a weapon. It is the prism through which all possibilities are refracted. It shows the potential of every choice." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Ilanar asked, her voice desperate. "I can't stop it. I've already failed. The temple Vitaelium, it's all falling apart." The figure's eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed with an ancient wisdom. "You have not failed. You've merely awakened a truth. The power of Vitaelium is not about control. It is about understanding. You must choose. Will you destroy this world to save it, or will you let it be reborn?" I don't know how," Ilanar whispered, her thoughts spinning. "I don't know if I can." "You do not need to understand everything. You only need to choose." As the figure spoke, Ilanar felt the presence of something else, the energy of Vitaelium itself. It was still there, still pulsing with life, but now it seemed different. It wasn't a weapon. It was a force, a part of the universe itself, holding both the potential for creation and destruction. A vision flashed before her eyes. She saw the galaxy, broken, torn by the wars of the empires, the chaos of ambition. She saw the faces of Sevra, Talon, Drakhan, all of them driven by their own desires, their own fears. But she also saw something else. A flicker of hope, a glimpse of something better. People working together, healing the damage done by the endless cycles of war. The power of Vitaelium in the right hands could change everything. But it could also destroy everything if used in the wrong way. "You must find the others," the figure said. "They are key to what is to come. But remember, they will not be the same as you remember. Time has already shifted. They may not even recognize the person you once were." Ilanar's heart sank. The others, Sevra, Talon, Drakhan, she had already seen their paths twist. Would they still be the same? Would they still be the enemies she had fought, or would they be something else entirely? "But I can't do this alone," Ilanar said, her voice trembling. "What if they refuse to listen? What if they want to take Vitaelium for themselves?" The figure's form flickered again, its presence softening. "The choice is always yours, but you are not alone. There are others who see beyond the surface. Those who understand that power is not meant to be wielded, but shared. You will find them when the time is right." And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, leaving Ilanar alone once more. Chapter 7 Shattered Realities. Ilanar blinked and found herself standing in the ruins of the temple once more. The air was thick with dust and smoke. The ceiling partially collapsed. The crystal was gone. There was no sign of the others, no indication of where they had gone, or if they had survived. Her heart was pounding, the weight of the figure's words heavy on her mind. She was in a different place now, a different time. She had been given a choice, but the choices ahead would not be easy. There was a flicker of hope, but it was distant, and it was fragile. With the power of Vitaelium still echoing in her mind, Ilanar knew that the struggle was far from over. She had to find the others, even if they had changed. She had to stop the destruction, to prevent the galaxy from tearing itself apart. But as she moved through the ruins, she couldn't shake the feeling that something else was coming. A force greater than anything she had ever faced. Vitaelium had shown her the path, but it was up to her to walk it. And the road ahead would not be easy. The galaxy was in turmoil, but it was still hers to save. Chapter 8. The Broken Alliance. Ilanar set out toward the nearest settlement, her heart heavy with the weight of the choices ahead. She knew that finding the others would be the first step, but the paths they had walked were now different. She didn't know how long it would take, or if they would even be willing to listen to her after everything that had happened. As she traveled, the remnants of the Empire's wars were everywhere. Burned cities, shattered landscapes, people struggling to survive in the wake of the chaos. The power vacuum created by the destruction of the temple had left the galaxy in disarray. Without Vitaelium to anchor them, the empires were scrambling for control, desperate to fill the void left behind. Ilanar's mind kept returning to the figure's words. The galaxy had been given a chance for rebirth, but it would only come if she could unite those who had once been enemies. And she would have to do it quickly, before the universe unraveled beyond repair. The next chapter will reveal the dangers of trying to bring the empires together, and how the paths of Ilanar, Sevra, Talon, and Drakhan are fated to intertwine once again. Chapter 9. Echoes of the Past. The stars above Ilanar flickered like distant memories, their light weak and fractured. The galaxy, once so full of life, seemed to be slowly dying, each planet and station she passed marked by the scars of war. The empires, once proud and mighty, were now shells of their former selves, desperate to claim what was left of the power that had once ruled them. As Ilanar made her way through the ravaged lands, she couldn't shake the feeling that the very fabric of time was still shifting around her. Vitaelium had not just altered the present, it had fractured reality itself, breaking the continuity of the galaxy. It was as though every path she walked had already been walked by someone else, as if she were trapped in a cycle of repeating choices, a series of echoes bouncing through time. She entered a small settlement, the remnants of a village that had once been bustling with life. Now only a few souls lingered, scavenging the ruins for whatever they could find. It was a place that had been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy, a place that had been abandoned in the wake of the Empire's wars. But it was also a place that had survived. The people here were not like the elite or the rulers who had once sought to control Vitaelium. They were survivors, fighters who had learned to adapt to the broken world around them. Ilanar had seen their kind before, those who had lost everything but still refused to give in. It was in this desolate place that she found the first sign of hope. "Are you the one they call the dreamer?" a voice asked, interrupting her thoughts. It was quiet, a whisper that seemed to come from the shadows. Ilanar turned, startled, but her eyes quickly found the source of the voice. A figure stood at the edge of the settlement, cloaked in ragged robes, their face obscured by a hood. There was something in their stance, a sense of calm in the midst of the chaos, that immediately caught Ilanar's attention. "I've been called many things," Ilanar replied, her voice steady but wary. "But who wants to know?" The figure stepped forward, their movements slow and deliberate. "Someone who knows that the future is not yet set. Someone who believes there is still a chance to stop the fall." The figure's words echoed in Ilanar's mind, reminding her of the choice she had seen earlier, the path to salvation and the path to destruction. She could sense that this person, this mysterious figure, understood more than most. "I think you're mistaken," Ilanar said, her heart heavy with the burden of what she had seen. "The galaxy is on the brink. Vitaelium's power has already been unleashed. I can't fix this. The figures shook their heads slowly, a deep sadness in their eyes. You can, but you must first face what you have become. The choices you've made, the paths you've walked, they've brought you here to this moment. But what you do now, how you move forward, will determine everything. Ilanar's gaze dropped to the ground. The weight of the figure's words pressed heavily on her chest. She had walked so far, fought so many battles, and yet it felt as though she was no closer to understanding the true nature of Vitaelium, or the universe she had sought to save. I don't know if I can change the course of things, Ilanar confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I've seen what happens if I fail. The destruction, the wars, the lives lost. It's too much. The figure stepped closer, reaching out to gently lift Ilanar's chin so that their eyes met. You are not alone in this. You never were. Ilanar blinked, confused by the figure's words. What do you mean? You are not the only one who has seen the threads of fate, Ilanar. There are others who are waking up to the truth. Others who understand that the power of Vitaelium must be shared, not hoarded. Suddenly, a vision hit Ilanar like a lightning bolt. She saw the faces of the others, Sevra, Talon, Drakhan, each of them, too, struggling with the weight of their own choices, their own paths. She saw flashes of them in different places, different timelines, some still fighting, others questioning their actions. They weren't the same people they had been when they first entered the temple, when they had first sought to claim Vitaelium's power. You're saying that they've changed? Ilanar asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and skepticism. They must change, the figure replied, just as you must. But the change is not guaranteed. You have to find them. You have to make them see what they cannot yet see. And you must do it before the final moment arrives. The figure's words reverberated in Ilanar's mind as they disappeared into the shadows. She was left standing in the empty village, alone with the weight of her mission. Her path was clear. She had to find them, the others, but they were not the same as before. The path to salvation would not be easy. They would test her, challenge her, and perhaps, in the end, they would be the ones who would lead the galaxy to its fate. Chapter 10, Revelations. Ilanar spent the next few days traveling through the broken world, determined to find the others. The universe was unraveling around her, and with every passing moment, it seemed as though time itself was slipping through her fingers. As she moved forward, she encountered remnants of the empires. Refugees, soldiers, and scavengers all trying to survive in the wake of the chaos. The world she had known was no more. Vitaelium's power had broken the foundations of everything, leaving nothing but a fractured reality in its wake. But even amidst the ruin, there were whispers of those who had seen the truth, who had realized the true nature of Vitaelium and its power. Some were working to rebuild, to understand the force they had once sought to control. Others, however, were still consumed by their ambition, unwilling to let go of their dreams of power. It was during one of these encounters that Ilanar found the first piece of the puzzle. She came upon an old outpost, a crumbling structure half buried in the sand. Inside, she found a small group of survivors who spoke of a hidden alliance, a group of former enemies who had set aside their differences in the face of the galaxy's destruction. They spoke of Sevra Kaal, the general of the Viratan Empire, who had disappeared after the fall of the temple. They spoke of Talon Zhir, the princess of the Zhyran monarchs, who had gone into hiding, seeking a way to undo the damage she had caused. And they spoke of Drakhan Arak, the warlord of the Kalamar Confederation, who had been seen leading a group of rebels, fighting against the remnants of the Empire's forces. Ilanar's heart quickened. These were the people she needed to find. They had not given up. They had not let the chaos consume them. But time was running out. She had to act quickly.